Now, one of the things that we've spent tremendous amounts of time on that is really, really critical, of course, is the economy.
Yeah.
And and someone asked me last night if there's one thing you would like to see fixed, what would it be? Well, I actually don't think the economy is the most important thing.
Okay.
I don't. I think the Constitution is more important.
Yeah.
But the reality is, Americans will not react if you hurt their children or if you destroy their schools, get 34% success rates in schools. They don't care.
No.
They're not coming to a school board meeting. They're just, hey, you got my kid, leave me alone.
Right.
All right. They won't do anything. But when you cost them money or make them money, then they care. And so when you looked at what Trump did in 17, 18, and 19 and the way that impacted the job market and wages began to rise faster than inflation, that bought tremendous loyalty among people that really weren't paying attention to politics until he gave them a reason to by helping them succeed.
Yeah.
I think it's harder this time, but let's get into some of the facts. And so to do that, we've got EJ Antoni on the line. EJ, welcome back to the Conservative Voice on WWDB AM 860 in Philadelphia.
Well, thank you for having me again. Pleasure to be back.
We're always glad to have you because this is such a critical issue, and you explain it better than anybody. Help us, get a sense of where is the economy right now. Like we saw some troubling data in employment. I don't know if that's just cleaning up bad numbers or what's going on. Can you just give us a sense of what you think is happening right now, please?
Well, certainly. I mean, this entire year really has been a year of transition. We spent 4 years under Biden where we had prices basically, for the most part, prices were growing faster than incomes. Obviously, that's problematic. You had increasingly the labor market relying on not private sector hiring, but government hiring. Again, increasingly problematic because who's going to pay for all those government jobs? It's the private sector, the folks paying taxes working in the private sector. So as you grow one end of that equation without growing the other, that's going to be a big problem. Again, the unsustainability of the trajectory of government spending, of the debt, et cetera, all these things were problematic. And much like alcoholism, the good effects come first and the bad effects come later, right? You get buzzed first and then you're hungover the next day. With government spending, the GDP numbers look great. With government hiring, your jobs numbers look great. All these things look great at first. Government spends all this money. Hey, isn't this great? They're sending checks to us and they're giving us free stuff, free in quotation marks. And then all of a sudden you get 40-year high inflation, the fastest rise in interest rates, also in 40 years. Oh, and by the way, the monthly mortgage payment on a median price home literally more than doubles in less than 4 years. So these are the fruits of that big government and anti-constitutional, if I may, agenda. So reversing all of those things is going to reverse those effects. But the order here is important. You get the negative effects first and the good effects later over time. Again, with alcoholism, when you're hungover, what do you want to do? Grab the bottle, hair the dog, right? It's a lot more. It's a lot more difficult to go through the path to long-term health, which is sobering up. That's going to be really painful. But again, it's the path to long-run health. Well, what's the path to long-run economic health? You fire all the bureaucrats that you hired over the last 4 years. That's going to make your jobs numbers look pretty lousy. But guess what? It's going to be good for you in the long run. You stop all the government spending. That's going to make the GDP numbers look lousy. But again, it's good for you in the long run. And as the government spends, borrows, and prints less money, inflation rates come down, interest rates come down, and then all of a sudden, homes are affordable again. Wouldn't that be nice? So this is the transition we're in the middle of this year. And now you have the additional complexity of things like tariffs, for example, which might cause disruptions in international trade, might cause temporary price increases, et cetera. But what are the long-run effects? You're reshoring the manufacturing base. You're going to create manufacturing jobs in the long run. You're going to stabilize your supply chains as you continue to get more and more stuff onshore, whether it's critical things like pharmaceuticals or heavy industry for the military, computer chips, software, you name it. Again, all of these things are going to take time. This is a year of transition, and that's basically what I've seen in the macro level data, and I think that's what a lot of Americans are seeing too. Now that's small consolation though, I have to say, for a lot of folks. I was doing an interview the other day and somebody had said, why are people, really bashing on Trump for the economy? Can't they give him 18 months at least to turn this thing around?
Right.
Why can't people wait, just 18 months? I'm like, why should anybody want to wait another year and a half? It's not as if they were thrown into a horrible situation in January of this year. People have been suffering for at least 3 years before that. Right. So you're not asking people to wait 18 months for their life to get better. You're
right.
asking them to wait 36 months plus another 18. So people have to keep that in mind. This is not, the American people are suffering. Let me put it that way. The American people are suffering, and they're continuing to suffer. Now, are things getting better? Yes, but people still aren't in great shape today. And both of those things can be true at the same time. Under Biden, from the time he entered office to the time he left, if you look at the difference in prices and the difference in earnings, people's weekly paycheck could buy 4% less by the time he left office. So far under Trump, it's reversed, where people can buy 1% more with their weekly paycheck. Now, for all those playing along at home, that means you're still down about 3%. Right?
Right. They're not feeling it.
It's not as if you have completely undone all of the pain of the previous 4 years. And I think we have to acknowledge that. That's only right, that's only fair, and it's true mathematically. So again, are things on the right track? Yes. Are things getting better? Absolutely. Are we back, so to speak? No, not yet. And I think that's a fair assessment.
There was your friend Peter St. Onge, who I think you sort of collaborate with or speak to, put out a post today talking about how I think it was him. His daughter needed some healthcare attention and couldn't get it. They couldn't get appointments, and suddenly the healthcare system has opened up, and he's got access to getting that healthcare. That isn't really a direct economic thing, but it does go a bit to supply. And then when you look at what you posted 2 hours ago, 2 hours ago you posted that that incomes are now rising again faster than inflation, as they did during the first term. Inflation is too hot, you said. Certainly true. First of all, do you think these inflation and employment numbers and wage numbers are accurate? And then secondly, when we see that happening in that little post from, I think it was Peter St. Onge, when you see that opening up of capacity in healthcare and you see maybe some improvement in wages, is that all a direct result of seeing 2 million people exit the country voluntarily, and maybe another, I don't know how many he's deported, but a few deport these foreign nationals that have been told to go back home?
Well, there's only really one way, in my opinion, that we can square the circle of all the oddities and the even sometimes contradictory signals that we're getting from the labor market. So many people have been kind of myopically focused on the changes in labor demand, which undoubtedly have happened this year. Again, it's a year of transition. Yep. You're changing policy. You're going to change the effects. But that doesn't explain everything. And so you also have to look at the labor supply, which is drastically changing too because of this administration's change in immigration policy. And once you factor in that you're getting radical changes on both the demand and supply ends of the equation, now this is where the picture starts to make a little bit more sense. And you have fewer contradictions and you have fewer, mixed signals, so to speak, in that labor market data. Now, some of it you just, I think, have to chalk up to the fact that the data is lousy, and it has been lousy. And you and I have been talking, we've been talking about that for a couple of years now.
Yep.
And we've actually predicted on your show some of the revisions that we were going to get in the data. And sure enough, it was spot on because the problems have been clearly evident. It's just that the bureaucrats haven't done anything to actually fix it. But even if you account for that and you look at some private sector data that's available, like from the folks over at Trueflation, where I'm an advisory board member for them, they come up with both daily inflation reports and a monthly jobs report too. We can see that again. It's big time. It's just a year of transition. You are seeing less reliance on foreign labor, less reliance on government jobs, and more movement within the private sector. And those are good things. That doesn't mean your headline numbers are going to look great at first. They're not. But again, it's a movement away from drunkenness and back to long-term health, if I can use that analogy again.
Yeah, I was looking at Trueflation's numbers the other day, and I actually felt better because their numbers weren't as they were closer to what I was looking for. They weren't really high because
Okay.
I've been seeing inflation that was obviously much higher than reported. And then we were spending some time on the unemployment numbers, especially while the BLS was down, and we were looking at the Rasmussen polling, which is really troubling because their polling, which certainly
Yeah.
wouldn't be perfect, but is so far the best polling we've ever
Yep.
seen
Yeah.
on a lot of issues. Their polling was showing unemployment rates at much, much higher than the official statistics, something like 8%. This would have been for November. I think this was static from October to November, or maybe it was. I'm sorry, it was September, October, and it was the same number, and it was over 8. It was about 8.3. So these are, I guess seeing the inflation numbers come down from more than just the government saying it is reassuring, but also seeing these job numbers be so high is troubling, and we've seen noise about layoffs. What do you see happening in this labor market? Is this now transitioning back to Americans working? Is it transitioning back to full-time jobs, reversing what we talked about last year?
It is, absolutely, but that doesn't mean you don't have any headwinds, right? AI is one of those innovations, like pretty much all innovations, where you get initial headwinds in the labor market followed by tailwinds. In other words, AI is both a substitute for labor, but it's also a complement to labor. So AI is going to eliminate some jobs. That's pretty obvious, right? At the same time, you have other jobs like mine, for instance. I use AI all the time to make myself more productive. I'm able to take on additional projects because I can get things done faster, more efficiently, and produce a better quality product with the help of AI. And so as it makes me more productive and I can do more work, as your productivity goes up, what happens? You can command a higher wage rate, right? So AI is not just going to eliminate some jobs, it absolutely will, but over time it's going to create more jobs. And the result of this is that you end up, and in the long run, not necessarily at first, but in the long run, you always create more jobs with these technologies than you see eliminated. And you're going to have exactly that same phenomenon playing out today. I think we're already watching it play out in real time. But we're also seeing some other phenomenons, like the fact that it's really coming to a head. All of these folks who had no business going to college, they went anyway. They couldn't major in a real degree, let's call it. And so instead they got one of these nonsensical degrees that ends in the word studies, right? Whether that's, gender studies or feminine studies or African studies, you name it, colonial studies. I mean, all of this just nonsensical garbage that has no application in the real world. Well, a ton of these folks now are facing an environment where AI has eliminated a lot of these entry-level jobs. And they don't want to start as a fry cook, let's say, which is where a lot of us started.
Absolutely.
They think that a lot of these kids, sadly, think they are, above manual labor or whatever the case may be, not realizing that those entry-level jobs are simply the first rung on the ladder of success that you will climb to eventually go on to bigger and better things, right?
Yes.
People don't typically stay at McDonald's flipping burgers for 30 years. In fact, the turnover rate at McDonald's is so high that it's above 100%. In other words, positions typically see multiple people in that position before the year is out.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
Right? So you go to McDonald's, and we all know this story. You go and show that you can get a job done. You begin to build some habits that are helpful. While you're there, you realize, hey, wait a minute, I want to do more, and you start looking for another job.
Yes.
These are great entry-level jobs. And the problem I have is when they start demanding artificially high wages for those jobs, then we deploy technology and eliminate the jobs.
Yep.
I do not like going to a kiosk to order food so that a large corporation can eliminate the person I used to talk to.
Yep.
We need entry-level jobs for people, and maybe I'm just not being I'm being looking at that more emotionally than rationally, but I like seeing people.
I do.
And I would like to see entry-level jobs continue to exist. We need to employ people.
We do. And piggybacking off of what you're saying, when you go to the supermarket, like if there's a long line of people waiting to talk to someone, versus the kiosk, I will stand in that long line because I feel like the kiosk takes away from jobs. So I want to make sure that people stay employed. And so that's my part of my way of doing that is just hanging out, waiting in line. And then when I get there, we have our chat, I get my groceries, and I go home. Like it's just
Yeah.
it's ideal. I
Well,
like it.
so I have a less noble approach to that.
Okay.
I just hate those machines. Right? So, I got to put the thing in. Do you want a bag? Put it on the thing. And then, then I got to call somebody over because something's different. I just hate the machines. I think you've got a much more noble approach to going into the checkout line with a human. I'm just doing it because I like it easy.
It's about economics for me. If I've got two items, I want to get in and out. So I'll use the machine.
Sometimes the line on the machine is longer than a staffed team.
Yeah.
So overall, EJ, we see Trump implementing. This is what I think I see. I think I see Trump implementing the policies that build the foundation, and I'm talking about trade, immigration, now extending the tax reforms. I see him building the foundational support that might drive the economy the way it did in the first term. We might see high-value jobs coming back. Yes, AI is headwind, that's clear. And I think it's harder this time because people have so much debt. They have credit card debt and household debt. Corporations, the government's loaded with debt. Taxes are up, which is just like debt. Property taxes have gone through the roof, growing dramatically in lots of states. So there's more headwinds, I think, this time than 17. That's my perspective. But I do think he's building the foundation that we need to get the American miracle kicked off again. Am I being too optimistic? What do you think?
No, look, I'm very optimistic about 2026. The deregulation is really kicking into overdrive. I think that's going to continue next year. And a lot of the stuff that they've been doing this year is going to start bearing fruit, as those changes filter through the real economy. Same thing with the changes to taxes, right? The Big Beautiful Bill, as they called it, or One Big Beautiful Bill Act. I forget what the final name was, but that's going to have it has a lot of pro-growth supply side aspects to it. That's going to be very, very positive. I'm looking forward to that as well. We continue to see a lot of effort being made to rein in government spending. Now, is it where I want it to be? No, we're not down that low yet. I want to see much more progress being made, but I'm happy that we have seen some progress thus far. So again, positive news on that front. Things are moving in the right direction. I'm not trying to oversell it and say everything is sunshine and rainbows. It's clearly not. But again, it's moving in the right direction. Is it going to be as robust as 2018? I don't think so, because look, in when Trump took over in 17, he was dealing with a very lackluster economy. That's true. It was the slowest expansion after a recession since the Great Depression. So things were not great, but we weren't coming off 40-year high inflation. We weren't coming off this level of government debt where the cost to service the debt has basically doubled in 4 years. I mean, that's just astronomical. We didn't have the same kind of household debt that we do today. We didn't have the same kind of bifurcated economy in the sense that all of the asset gains under Biden really just accrued to the top 10%. I mean, actually, almost all of them accrued within just the top 1%. That's how lopsided the gains were under Biden. It was this vast transfer of wealth away from lower class and middle class, working class folks up to the government and the top 1% of asset owners. So we're going into this second Trump term in a much worse place than we were going into the first Trump term. And so on the one hand, you say, okay, we need to give the Trump administration a lot of grace in how long it's going to take them to right the ship, because they were dealt a much worse hand this go around than they were before. But that is countered by this thinking, which is, people are hurting so much more today than they were at the start of 2017 that we don't have that time, right? We can't take our time in righting the ship, so to speak. We need it done faster because people are drowning right now.
Are you optimistic for 2026? I mean, Scott Bessent seems to be saying 2026 is going to be, a banner year. The golden age coming in 26. What are your thoughts on that? Will it roll in by then?
I am definitely optimistic about 2026. I think we're going to see good economic growth, and I think it's going to be economic growth that's primarily accruing in the private sector, not the government. That's a big win. It's the opposite of what we saw under Biden, right? I'm looking at job growth within the private sector specifically that I think is going to be really good. And it's going to be jobs, again, they're not government jobs, they're private sector jobs. They'll be good full-paying jobs with benefits, and they're going to be going to Americans as opposed to going to foreign-born workers, right? Which includes both legal and illegal aliens.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Now, you posted about 30, just before you came on the air, you posted that Q3 GDP looks like it's going to be around 3.5%, which is really robust growth.
Mm-hmm.
Is that driven? We've only got about 4 minutes left, EJ. Is that driven by this? Even though we're in a transition, what is driving that robust economic growth?
Thankfully it's the private sector.
Yeah, that's what
we've seen very, very minimal growth in government, what's called government purchases in the GDP report. It's the portion of government spending that we count as government in the gross domestic product. So we've seen government purchases essentially stagnate this year. That's tremendous news.
Yeah,
and what we're seeing drive the economy again is private spending. That's private consumer spending, and it's private investment spending. International trade has been very volatile this year because of all the news around tariffs, but that looks like it's more or less ironed out at this point. In other words, the big surge in one quarter and the big drop in another quarter, the changes seem to have really smoothed out at this point. So that doesn't look like it's going to have much of an impact. So again, it's private consumer spending and private investment that's really driving these numbers, and that's great news.
And there's a lot of talk of this $20 trillion. I don't think it's going to be 20. I don't know how it could possibly be 20 trillion. But in the first term, the tax reforms brought back about $2 trillion of private investment. Are we starting to see the impact of some of that foreign direct investment coming as well as domestic private investment that's driving the economy the right way? I always say this is transitioning from the Soviet to a free economy. Is it some of that money that Trump had gotten commitments for people to invest in the United States that's driving this?
To a limited extent, yes, we are seeing some of that show up, but most of that promised investment is really going to start kicking in next year, and I think that's a big reason why both the Treasury Secretary and I are so optimistic, really, about 2026. Again, that's not to say that it is going to be all sunshine and rainbows. Again, we're digging ourselves out of a very big hole, but I think the progress that we've seen in 25 is going to accelerate in 26. And again, that's a source for optimism.
Yeah, see, that's the key, is you want to shift it from government-funded, regulatory-driven investments to private sector investments with light regulations. And, you already touched on the regulatory environment changing. Again, we got about 2 minutes left, but is the impact of the regulatory reforms that are being done at EPA and other agencies, Zeldin seems to be driving this, but is that going to both address inflation? Is that going to help free up this American miracle, this economic machine?
Oh, certainly. I mean, the regulatory costs are measured in the trillions of dollars every year. It's like $2 trillion or something on the economy. That's the drag from regulation every single year. And what they just did this past week with updating the CAFE standards, that's the gas mileage standards for cars, SUVs, and for pickup trucks. I mean, that's going to be absolutely tremendous. You're going to be able to sell cars in the United States like the Toyota Hilux, which is a small pickup. Those kinds of vehicles that are already sold overseas, you simply can't sell in the U.S. because of these stupid regulatory requirements. And it has nothing to do with things consumers care about, like safety or engine reliability. No, it's all this emission and gas mileage garbage. So the fact that they're rolling that back and they're not getting rid of it, they're just putting it back to where it was before Biden. That's going to save over $100 billion for consumers over the next few years. It's on average, it's going to reduce car prices by $1,000 a pop. And I know that may not sound like much when new cars are regularly selling for $40,000, $50,000, or $60,000 today. But again, it's a step in the right direction
toward affordability.
We're going to keep going.
Yes.
Right. We're going to keep going, rolling back these regulations one by one. And at the end of the day, you're going to look back and say, wow, $1,000 here, $1,000 there. Right. And pretty soon we were talking about real money and I can afford a car again.
Yeah, this is great.
Amazing.
This is what we were hoping for. And in all this negative noise that we hear every day, we've got to keep focusing on the real positive things. This will make a difference in 26. Trump is doing his part. EJ, thank you so much for joining us once again on the Conservative Voice. And as you know, we're going to be calling you again soon because we just love getting your insights. Yes. So thank you for that. And everyone will be back in just about 4 minutes for the second hour of the Conservative Voice on WWDB AM 860 in Philadelphia.